on a personal level, I'm not 100% sure how to feel about this on a personal level. And I'm not sure that, like, necessarily, I'm not sure what the right reaction is to this, but I don't know. All I can really say is that Nick has been kind to me in the past. And as I mentioned, I've been to his house and he showed me, courtesy, and he's been friendly to me. And so I don't, my immediate concern is for Nick, who has been kind to me. And that's, my immediate concern is that he obviously, if he has a drug problem, which seems like there's some evidence to suggest he might, I will note that even if we can dick around on the margins a little bit, 25 grams, give or take, is not exactly encouraging. So it's like, oh, instead of 26 grams, how about 24 grams? I mean, it's like, well, it's nice that we were able to get to 24 instead of 26 so we could drop a level. But 24 isn't exactly a rousing endorsement for not having a drug problem. So, yeah. So there's that. So my immediate concern is well, first of all, that he gets the best legal outcome possible, because he deserves that, as does anyone. Get a lawyer. I understand he has hired a lawyer, by the way. I heard it from Attorney Tom, who apparently heard it from Nick himself, that he has hired a lawyer, which makes sense, obviously. I assumed the I'm representing my wife was solely for the purposes of the initial, reading of the thing. I didn't assume that he was going to have any intent on representing her or April on an ongoing basis. And as the prosecutor pointed out, there's probably an unwaivable conflict of interest anyway. So I understand that they've retained a lawyer, which, God bless. So that's good news. But, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this on a personal level, because I have certainly seen clips of his work. Although, to be honest, I hadn't seen the most recent clips until sometime between the time in which I first learned of his arrest and now. So I hadn't seen, like, the clips that have been circulating from, like, the last week or something, where, or where things look like really questionable. So I hadn't seen some of that stuff before I commented the last time. So my knowledge of his states was, let's say, from give or take January until, let's say, the beginning of May. During that period, I saw various clips that concerned me, but I didn't know how concerned to be, because I didn't know, like, how real it is, or how much of it's an act and how much of it is, like, performative and how much of it's real. And, so, that there's that. And also, I also feel like a little bit, I feel some gratitude personally. I don't know if gratitude is exactly the right word. I feel lucky personally, because there was a time on stream where I was drinking fairly amount. And ironically enough, and I don't know if this is true for Nick or not, because it was true for me, I was drinking heavily, but only drinking heavily on stream. Right? Because there were a couple times where people, like, gave shot challenges, like do $100 a shot, and sometimes people were generous, and I was doing drinking. And so there was a period, like, let's say, because I've been doing full-time YouTube since July 2 years ago. So there was a period, let's say, from about January 2 years ago, maybe a little bit later, to maybe, a year ago or a year and a half ago, something like in that time interval, when I was drinking on stream and drinking to excess sometimes, and people thought I had a problem, and, I didn't think I had a problem. And on the last such occasion that I drank this heavily on stream, which I don't know when this would be, I'd have to go, like, double check when it was, but I think it was like a year ago, if not more at this point. But there was an occasion on which, like, someone gave me something like, I'm going to screw up the number, but like $1,500 or $2,000 at, at $100 a shot. And then I attempted to basically drink all of it, like, all at once, which turned out to be a bad plan. You know, you probably shouldn't try to drink 16 shots like immediately back to back to back to back to back to back to back. That turned out to be, you know, not the greatest plan. And I made somewhat of a I think I, you know, I was not exactly coherent on stream. It was not a good look. And I had some friends the next day or shortly thereafter come to me and be like, dude, what's up, man? This is really not good. And then I was like, you know what? You're right. And then I just didn't do it anymore. So I have never, well, I won't say I haven't ever drunk on stream before because I don't think that would be true. But I've never done like shots like that before. I might have had a beer on stream, but I've never like since then drank to anything like excess. So having gone through that myself to some degree, I feel a couple things. I feel a little bit like, but for the grace of God go I, a little bit, because, you know, I was able to escape a more dramatic fate. I never was an alcoholic because I was able to just stop. You know, I was using the alcohol essentially medicinally, at least initially, for depression, which isn't necessarily ideal because alcohol itself is a depressive. So you're using a depressive to treat depression, which isn't exactly ideal, but you know, what else can you do? But anyways, like initially just using it medicinally, and then when I realized it was destructive, I just stopped. And so I feel like, and I never have used illicit drugs. So I feel a little like, but for the grace of God go I. And I feel like I see a little bit of myself in Nick to some of that. So I feel like, I don't know. And also he's been good to me personally. So I just feel like I hope he gets the help he needs. And I hope he's able to recover as I've mostly recovered in relation to this stuff. So, yeah. So, you know, but my concerns is for my concern is for my friend and that the hopes that he will be well. And I don't know the degree to which I'll cover this in an ongoing basis. I might, but I don't know. We'll see. Oh, I sort of interrupted my own train of thought because I started talking about myself. Sorry. I related it too much to myself and I kind of interrupted my own train of thought. Moving backwards in my earlier train of thought, what my original point was that I had seen his behavior deteriorate over, let's say, January of this year to, let's say, May of this year. Or maybe a little bit before January. But over the last, let's say, 5 to 6 months, excluding, you know, the immediate past 2 weeks, because I wasn't aware of that. But over that time period, I had seen clips sent to me where his behavior on stream seemed to be more, what would be the best word for it? Concerning, I guess is the best word for it, because that's how I felt. I felt concerned. And I didn't know how much of it was real, and I didn't know how much of it was performative. But it seems like there was a fair amount of it that was real. And I had called him about 3 months ago, give or take. First of all, Nick is just impossible to get on the phone. The man does not respond to text messages or phone calls. So getting the man on the phone was a pot. So I've been trying to reach him for a while because he doesn't return phone calls. And then when I did get him on the phone, I asked him about it. And, you know, he told me that, you know, he wasn't an alcoholic and that, you know, he didn't have a problem and all the rest of it. And, you know, so I tried to reach out to him. I tried to express concern. I've done that before via text message. I've done it maybe 2 or 3 other times within, like, say, the last 6 months or so. Tried to reach out to him and be like, you know, I'm here, I'm an ear, if I can help. I remember another time I talked to him, I couldn't say when, maybe 6 months ago, who knows, where he seemed to be going through some problems. I can't remember what they were, but I said to him that, you know, I'm not even sure he told me. I think he just vaguely alluded to them, that he was going through stuff. I think this was around the time that he was renegotiating his Rumble contract, maybe, if that helps with the time frame. But you know, I told him that he could call me and I would be there for him, and you know, he never took advantage on that. But you know, I tried to reach out to him as best as a friend could, and you know, I feel like maybe I didn't see as much as I should have seen, Or maybe I was more in denial about what I was seeing than what I should have seen, because I was close to him, because I was his friend, and at least, he's never done anything wrong to me. So I have no reason not to say that he was a friend and is a friend to me, because he's never done anything wrong to me. So maybe I was just too close to it and I didn't see it or didn't want to see it. But, the clip that, the clips that have been circulating recently with him on stream were particularly disturbing. And I never saw anything like that before. So, yeah. But I wanted to try. Oh, and also, by the way, about his legal license, because people ask me about that. I would suspect, and I wouldn't know for sure, but I would suspect that he's looking at some sort of suspension, but not disbarment. This offense does not appear to fall into the category of moral turpitude, right? There are certain crimes like fraud, for example, would be a good example, where it's a moral turpitude because you're a liar and you're deceiving people and you're tricking people, and it shows a moral failing. So there are crimes that fall into this category of moral turpitude, and I don't think that this qualifies because it's a drug possession problem. It's not any crime involving deceit, fraud, lies. First of all, that's good news in and of itself. Because if it's not crimes of moral turpitude, the bar tends to care less. Secondly, lawyers, at least, and I don't know the degree to which the statistic is correct, because I believe the statistic goes back to when I was in law school, but lawyers have something like 3 times the rate of addiction problems compared to the general population. So when it comes to lawyers and substance abuse, this isn't exactly the bar's first rodeo. So I would imagine, although I wouldn't know for sure, but I would imagine the bar is going to insist that he goes through some sort of relatively standardized sort of treatment regimen involving some sort of psychiatry or maybe drug counseling or whatever. And he's looking at a potential suspension of his license for some time until he can potentially satisfy whatever conditions of blah, blah, blah. So that's what my working presumption is going to be. Of course, this is a felony. That doesn't help. But that would be my working presumption. So we'll see. He didn't, to the best of my knowledge, he didn't steal money from the client, because that will get you disbarred in a hurry. If you want the quickest trip to disbarment, steal money from the client. That's the number one way to get there. He didn't literally fuck the client. Sleeping with the client will be is a problem. He didn't betray the client's secrets, right? So like the sort of top tier hit list of the bar is you're going to have a bad day with the bar. None of those things appear to be implicated, at least so far. So I'm reasonably, cautiously optimistic that he will keep his license, perhaps after some sort of suspension, which, if I had to imagine, will ultimately be something that he'll agree to as a negotiated settlement with the bar. If I had to guess, which I do, because I don't know, but that's where we are. Now, Robin makes a good point in chat. And I was sort of alluding to this earlier when I was saying I don't know what it says about me. And I'm not sure what it says necessarily about my character or anything else, but I'll be honest with you, because it's just how I feel. And what else can you do except say how you feel, even if it's the wrong feelings? Maybe my feelings are the wrong feelings. Maybe I shouldn't feel this way, but I'll tell you how I feel. Like Robin in chat says, I think what the saddest part is everyone's worried about Nick and no one's talking about the kids and maybe what they've been through. I don't feel bad for Nick. I feel sad for the kids. I understand how you feel. I get it. That makes sense to me. Perhaps because I would assume, without knowing, that you don't know any of these people personally, right? You don't have any sort of relationship with any of them personally. So you're viewing this from more of an objective standpoint, which perhaps is the better standpoint. Perhaps it's the more correct standpoint. Perhaps I'm too close to have the correct viewpoint on this issue. But for better or worse, and I'm not sure what it says about me. For better or worse, my thoughts primarily are with Nick. That isn't to say I don't care about his children. I obviously do. But my first thoughts are with Nick. So maybe that's because I have a relationship with that. Maybe it's because when I saw him with his kids, when I was at his house, however long ago that was, everything I could see seemed like he was a good father. I had no reason to think that he wasn't a good father and that he wasn't taking care of them. So I don't know. So I'm not sure what it says about me or my thoughts or my feelings on this issue. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe I'm too close to him. But my feelings primarily are with Nick. I suppose it's because he's the one I have the allegiance to. So I because I feel like, we have a bond. A spirit de corps. A spirit de corps. We've gone through the trenches together in some sense in the law tube genre. And I don't know, there's something in there somewhere, so whatever. I assume that he will get clean. I assume that he will not lose his parental rights in the long term. So we'll see. Rusty says, when you know someone who uses it, it's hard to watch the person change because of substance abuse. The person is not the person on drugs, which is also possible. Because to the extent that I know him on a personal level, from being with him at, say, for example, Anime Matsuri, or being with him in Tennessee, or being at him in Vegas, or being to his home, or being with him on various streams, to the extent I've known him and spent time with him, it was all basically before this, let's say, critical interval of the last 6 months. So it is quite possible that the Nick I have in my mind is to some degree not the Nick that currently exists. I can't speak to that. I don't know. And as someone in chat sort of pointed out, I have basically zero experience dealing with junkies, like in any capacity whatsoever. I've never been a friend with a junkie. I've never had to deal with a junkie. The closest I've ever gotten to anything even close to this is people who drank too much and threw up because they were drinking too much. And, and then, they got up the next day and they went about their life. So yes, I have zero experience with junkies. So that, for better or worse, informs and perhaps does not taint my views, which again, could be incomplete. Alcohols or junkies? Maybe. I mean, if you want to say an alcoholic is a junkie, then fine. But then again, at least as far as I'm concerned, I don't know that Nick was an alcoholic. And I've never, to the best of my knowledge, I've never had someone who's confessed to being an alcoholic. I've never had someone go through 12. I don't know anybody. So I have no experience. I don't know anything about the ticket case he took up or any romantic entanglement he might have had with another client. I don't know anything about that. Having dealt with addicts before, the way Nick is already trying to push away all blame, saying he's not going to stop anytime soon. Could be. I mean, in the end of the day, to some degree, he can only save himself. Also, incidentally, while I'm at this, as I'm sort of trying to decide for myself to what degree, if at all, I'm going to be covering this on an ongoing basis, I can't speak for anyone else and what they will or will not do, but obviously their ethics are not mine. And some people have argued, for example, that if, for example, any of us were arrested, that Nick would be making fun of this on his stream or grifting off of it or whatever. And I don't know, even assuming that that's true, I don't necessarily know what that has to do with me. Because if you believe that Nick is an alcoholic and or a drug addict, I'm not necessarily sure that what Nick would do should necessarily be the end all be all of what I would do or should do. So whether Nick would or would not grift off this or, make fun of it or whatever he would do, I'm not really sure necessarily speaks to what I should do. Incidentally, by the way, that is not meant to condemn anyone else who takes a different position on this, except unless they are reveling in it, unless they are they are ecstatic or otherwise gleeful on his downfall. Those are bad people and they can go screw themselves. But anyone else who's covering this in any way they deem fit or not is fine by me. But I haven't figured out, what the right ethical thing to do is for me here. So I'll work on that. Also, incidentally, if Nick is a cocaine addict or a cocaine user, should I feel offended, like on a personal level, because he never offered me cocaine? I mean, I thought he was my friend. But never once did the man offer me cocaine or ketamine or any other drug. So assuming the premise that he's a cocaine user, should I feel offended? You guys can get back to me on that one.